Good evening, I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. The United States proposes a new format of peace talks for Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says it would mean discussions between representatives of Ukraine, Russia, the US and other European nations. It comes as Russian officials fly to Florida to meet with a team of US negotiators. More on that in just a moment, but first, the latest headlines. EU has once again delayed signing Mercosur, a comprehensive trade deal with South America. Will the appointment of Poland's most liberal bishop as Krakow bishop bring more openness to the Polish Catholic Church? And Polish Foreign Ministry honors footballing ace Robert Lewandowski for promoting Polishness internationally. This Saturday, Florida is the international stage of diplomacy as U.S. and Russian delegations are set to meet to discuss the next steps in ending the war in Ukraine. What's more, President Zelenskyy announced the U.S. is offering a format featuring Ukraine and Russia at the same table. To get more details on the meeting and the latest from Ukraine, we are connecting live with our Kyiv correspondent, Oz Katerji. Good evening, Oz. So the meetings are taking place today in Florida. What are the expectations regarding the talks? Is anything going to move forward?
Well, look, whether they're going to move forward or not is something that very few people will be able to predict, because so much of it hinges upon how Russia reacts to the way Ukraine is trying to negotiate this. Now, it must be said that the US is proposing, there are reports that the US was proposing a new format of talks which would include Russia and Ukraine having direct negotiations with each other. Now, Zelenskyy himself confirmed this in a statement. Here's what he had to say.
As for a peace agreement, Rustem Umerov, Ukraine's delegation chief, had talks yesterday, and I will have more details a bit later today. The US said they would have a separate meeting with representatives of Russia. They proposed the following format, as far as I understand: Ukraine, America, Russia, and, since there are representatives of Europe there, probably Europe as well. The issues are all the same. How the United States will react after consultations with the Russians, to be honest, I do not know yet, but I will know today.
Now, Putin's envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, is also in Miami. He's going to be having discussions with a US delegation. So talks are definitely moving forward. As to whether they have reached any kind of point in which we'll see some forward momentum with them is another question. It must be said that Russia has rejected opportunities to negotiate directly with the Ukrainians on multiple occasions, and Putin has repeatedly questioned President Zelenskyy's legitimacy. Now, Zelenskyy should have had a presidential election in Ukraine. However, that has been suspended because of martial law, because of the Russian invasion. Now, the question of elections has not just been brought up by Russia, it's also been brought up by the United States. President Zelenskyy also spoke about elections today, saying that Putin cannot have any influence over them, or where they're going to be, when they're going to be held, or how they're going to be held. President Zelenskyy also spoke again, reiterating the difficulty of holding elections, saying that they can't be held without there being security measures in place, guarantees in place that will enforce the safety of the people taking those votes, making their votes in those elections. So that's going to be something that President Zelenskyy is going to keep bringing up. He has, in this statement released on Saturday, said that he brought that forward again to the Americans, and said that if the Americans want Ukraine to move forward with it, then they should be willing to provide Ukraine with the guarantees that would ensure the safety of the citizens involved casting their ballots. So again, it's a complicated situation. So the question as to whether we're going to see any forward momentum, as to whether we're just going to see more talks, really rests on whether we hear from Russia, how they'll respond to this idea of having direct negotiations with the Ukrainians and the Europeans and the Americans involved. If we're looking at their recent form, it would suggest that Russia is not going to accept these demands. So we'll see how it goes from there, Claudia.
Let's talk about what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, shall we? So the talks are ongoing, but both sides continue to exchange blows. Update us on what's been happening on the ground and how attacks played out.
Well, Russia in the early hours of Saturday morning launched more attacks across Ukraine. One person killed, 20 injured. In attacks, Russia has continued to target the energy infrastructure in Ukraine, with energy attacks reported in Mykolaiv, Donetsk, Kherson, and Dnipropetrovsk. We're still suffering from rolling blackouts here in Kyiv. You know, you've got the winter lights on, the Christmas lights on here behind me, right in the very center. But much of the city is having to deal with daily blackouts for large periods of the day. This is the reality in the capital city. So obviously, it's going to be very, very difficult for people in much more rural settings as well. Now, Ukraine has also registered its own attacks within the last couple of days, with a reported attack by the Ukrainians on 2 Su-27s at an airbase in Crimea. There's also been a reported attack by the Ukraine's security services using drones on a oil platform in the Caspian Sea. So very, very far away from where we've seen Ukraine operating before. But that campaign that Ukraine is escalating in recent weeks, targeting Russian shadow fleet ships that are transporting oil under sanctions, and now targeting oil platforms far, far away from the sort of forward line of operations in the Ukrainian theater. So the Ukrainians definitely see targeting Russia's oil infrastructure as far abroad as they can reach as being central to that, whereas Russia continues to target civilian energy infrastructure here in Ukraine, really making life very difficult for Ukrainian civilians as those bitter winter temperatures really kick in.
Thank you, Oz. That was Oz Katerji reporting live from Kyiv. Let's continue. This Mercosur summit in Brazil was supposed to be the one for the history books. But after 26 years in the making, the signing of the deal between Europe and South America did not take place due to the opposition from Poland, France, and Italy. The deal has so far sparked a wave of protests, including the one in Brussels this past week, with EU farmers opposing Mercosur, which they believe could undermine their business prospects. Paweł Trzaskowski has more on the details of the agreement in his latest report.
Leaders of South American countries are posing for a family photo in Brazil. Today they were supposed to finalize the Mercosur trade deal with the European Union, but no representative of the European bloc was present to sign it. The signing of the deal, that has been 26 years in the making, was postponed until the beginning of next year. The reason? Opposition from Poland and France and growing hesitation in Italy. Enough votes to throw the deal overboard. Warsaw and Paris have long been opposing the deal, fearing it could harm the country's agricultural industry. And this week, during the European Council summit, farmers made it absolutely clear that they don't like the Mercosur deal.
It's mixed feelings, a combination of anger and fear mixed with anxiety, because we have no long-term vision, or even a short-term one.
But the deal is not only about agriculture. Mercosur, a shorthand for the Southern Common Market, is the world's 6th largest economy with a population of 270 million. Last year, the EU trade with the bloc was worth over 111 billion euro, split almost equally between export and import. EU countries predominantly import Mercosur products that are not produced in Europe or are needed in great quantity.
Designed for you.
In return, the EU sends mostly advanced technology or refined products to South America. The new trade deal would eliminate over 90% of tariffs between the blocs, creating a massive free trade area, potentially a much-needed boost for EU's economy.
It is good for the European economy. The available analysis and forecasts all show it will be beneficial.
Therefore, There are more parties involved in the deal than farmers alone, but as of now, they are the most vocal group. Fearing that the deal
may make our farmers less competitive.
Their concerns were partially addressed by implementing safeguards designed to curb sudden surges of agricultural imports. However, these do not seem to completely appease the protesters. Italian farmers eventually forced the country to join the hesitant group this week. That's why the country's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni had to convince Brazil's president not to walk away from the deal.
In my conversation with Prime Minister Meloni, she told me that she is not against the agreement. She is just facing a certain political embarrassment because of Italian farmers. But she is confident that she can convince them to accept the deal.
Then officially, the deal is still on, ready to be signed on January the 12th.
And I'm very confident that we'll bring it home.
But will it be eventually brought home? 3 weeks is a lot of time to change some minds either way. Paweł Trzaskowski for TVP World.
This is a big shift towards a more progressive Catholic Church in Poland. Cardinal Grzegorz Ryś is going to now hold the seat of the Archbishop of Krakow. This change is not without a political meaning, as the office is of particular importance for the Polish Church. Ryś, often referred to as the most liberal bishop in Poland, takes over following his conservative predecessor, Archbishop Jędraszewski. More on the significance of this appointment in Kazimierz Łysiak's report.
Major refurbishing is taking place in the Polish Catholic Church, and it's more than just these nativity scenes. Cardinal Grzegorz Ryś has become the new Archbishop of Krakow, replacing his more traditionalist predecessor, Archbishop Jędraszewski.
This is a very impactful and challenging moment, I think, not only for the church in Krakow, but also for the Church of Poland.
The two bishops represent completely different approaches to faith. Archbishop Ryś has a more pastoral approach, akin to his appointer, Pope Leo. He is often referred to as the most liberal bishop in Poland.
All of us in the Catholic Church are building a home together, and we are all responsible for this home. What we need is to be a community which listens to each other.
In October, Archbishop Ryś established an independent commission to investigate cases of sexual abuse in the Polish Catholic Church. And while that didn't do him any favors among many conservative priests in the country, it caught the attention of Pope Leo, who's making transparency in the church one of his priorities. The Supreme Pontiff personally chose Ryś to lead the most important see in Poland.
He is a person well prepared for this job, and he himself said that he's not going to step back, rather to confront the past of the church with today's demands.
The man he replaced, Archbishop Jędraszewski, positioned himself as an uncompromising preacher, defending traditional Catholicism against perceived threats. He is known for being an ally of the Conservative Law and Justice Party, now in opposition. He criticized the LGBTQ+ community and once compared it to the Bolshevik plague.
We have a new plague, not Marxist or Bolshevik, but born from the same spirit. It's neo-Marxist. It's not red, but rainbow.
Poland is an overwhelmingly Catholic country, although the number of declared faithful has been dropping in the last decade, according to public data. Could this new archbishop put this trend in reverse?
Generally speaking, I feel like this is a new hope for the church, especially for the Krakow diocese.
I believe this is a very good change. Archbishop Ryś is a man who understands ordinary people.
I like the way he's acting to tackle the issue of abuse of children.
While Archbishop Ryś is considered one of the most progressive in Poland, he's putting the teachings of Christ in the center of his homilies. Still, his appointment could be a major shift in the Polish church and the public's perception of it.
Krakow is one of the most important local churches in Poland. One of the most historically important because, John Paul II grew up there. And basically, that's the largest and the richest archdiocese in Poland. So that's a clear sign from Pope Leo XIV that there will be a new opening for the Polish Church.
For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Having won nearly every major award in football, it was now time for Polish star striker Robert Lewandowski to receive a Polish national honor, underlining the importance of his involvement in strengthening Poland's recognition abroad. Benemerito, the name of the honor, was awarded to Lewandowski by Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski. Gabriela Fesnak reports.
Polish football ace Robert Lewandowski was one of the 14 athletes and sporting personalities to receive the Benemerito Award earlier this week. Latin for well-deserved, the distinction is awarded to Polish citizens as well as foreign nationals who have strengthened Poland's international recognition through their achievements. Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski made an appearance at the gala, personally awarding the athletes with the medals.
Every award is something great, something wonderful. I also feel proud to be Polish, especially in how I try to support our country abroad and speak about it. More and more, people come to me asking if it's really true how Poland has changed. We are moving in a direction where being Polish is something to celebrate. It's a great source of pride.
Lewandowski, who has previously received the Best FIFA Men's Player title, the European Golden Boot and the Ballon d'Or Striker of the Year awards, has been named Polish Footballer of the Year a record 12 times and holds the national all-time scoring record.
We have outstanding athletes, many of whom are globally recognized figures. We are proud of them, as they represent our Polish identity and promote Poland on the international stage.
The ceremony on Thursday marked the 70th anniversary of Totalizator Sportowy, a state-owned Polish company founded in 1955 to raise funds for rebuilding and developing sports infrastructure after World War II. For TVP World, Gabriela Fesnak.
And now it's time for a bit of a holiday cheer. This next report will feature a very, very important person during the Christmas season, Santa Claus. The man himself goes around the world spreading happiness, delivering presents to sick children and cute animals, lighting up the Christmas trees, and making the holiday magical for generations of kids. Natalia Komarov has more on how Santas operate across the globe.
He's made a list, he checked it twice, and now he's coming to town. To Shanghai, New York, Vienna, or Sofia, where Santa Claus glided down the hospital roof with his helpers, sprinkling the Christmas joy among children with cancer.
They were very happy. They had prepared gifts for us, these bracelets that they had made, so I think we managed to cheer them up and make them happy.
Then he hopped on a bike and rushed to the Holy Land to deliver Christmas trees to Jerusalem's residents.
This year is different than other years, but I wish next year will be better and better, because Jerusalem is the city of peace. If we have peace in Jerusalem, it will be peace all around the world.
From there, Santa arrived in Bethlehem, his sleigh bells jingling, to light up the Christmas tree at the birthplace of Jesus Christ. He even journeyed deep into the heart of the Amazon jungle, delivering joy and Christmas cheer to the children of the Rio Negro community.
There are no roads here, nothing at all. Being able to come by ferry or boat and bring Santa Claus, the children are so happy.
While in Brazil, he even dove into Rio de Janeiro's aquarium, surprising the fish with a splash of Christmas magic.
I'm surprised. I thought he only gives gifts to humans, but apparently he gives to fish too. How incredible! Inclusion is always a good thing.
Of course, Santa's cheer knows no bounds. While nobody caught him tiptoeing through the London Zoo, many animals were spotted unwrapping their Christmas presents. And he was later seen hanging out with Queen Camilla, delivering gifts to children in hospice. Coming home to Lapland, Santa skipped his well-deserved nap to deliver this heartwarming message.
This Christmas, I hope that everybody could keep in mind that we have one world, one common home. We could all take a moment to think about how could Christmas bring us closer to each other. How could we all live in peace together? So merry and peaceful Christmas.
For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
And now time to revisit our top story of today, the meeting of Russian officials with U.S. negotiators in Florida on Saturday for the latest round of talks aimed at ending Russia's war in Ukraine. How is the failure to mobilize the frozen Russian assets and the establishment of €90 billion loan going to affect the latest talks? Where does the peace process stand as of now? To comment on these and more, Miroslava Gongadze, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, joins me in the studio. Thank you so much for joining me on World News Tonight.
Pleasure to be with you today.
So, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy confirmed today that the U.S. is pushing for a new format of peace discussions, which would involve officials from Kyiv, from Moscow, Washington, and perhaps some European countries as well, negotiating at the same table. Do you think that proposal will come to fruition?
That's what President Zelenskyy said that Americans are offering. However, it's not clear would it bring any results because as we remember, the last Ukrainian and Russian and American delegation met in July, and basically it did not really had a discussion, but not really fruitful. So this time around, Zelenskyy has some Europeans with Ukrainian delegation in Miami. So we will see. Ukraine is open to any negotiation. Ukraine is open to find a peace solution. The main thing for Ukraine right now, as President said, is a couple of issues. It's a security guarantees, one issue, the most important, and obviously the territorial integrity. Ukraine is not ready yet to give up its territory. President would not sign for that. President is saying that he wants to stay. The Ukraine would like to accept, if possible, peace only on the territories that right now is a front line. So we will see what will happen. All of this is just a question of very just peace and secure peace. That peace would not would stay there. That Russia would not break it and go again with new aggression. That's the main thing here.
I would like to take a look at the words of U.S.'s Marco Rubio. He said, quote, "It's not our war. It's a war on another continent." Is this quote actually a stark sign of how the negotiations could turn out in Miami today?
I mean, it's hard to say. Marco Rubio said a couple of things. He said that they actually made some progress in negotiation, but he said as well that to make this peace agreement, possible peace agreement, first of all, Ukraine has to sign for it, and second of all, Russia has to sign for it, not the U.S. All of this, basically, the negotiation should be between Ukraine and Russia, and the United States and Europeans should be moderators of this discussion, on guarantors of this peace agreement. However, right now what we see, it's mostly Ukrainian discussing with Americans, and that brings the question to this whole issue of negotiation. However, again, Ukraine is saying they want peace. They want to negotiate. They are willing to compromise. So we will see.
In relation to what you just said, Marco Rubio did indeed say a lot of things, and I would like to bring something else as well. He said, what we're trying to figure out here is what can Ukraine live with and what can Russia live with? Sort of identity what on both sides' positions are, and see if we can sort of drive them towards each other to some agreement. Do you think that at this point in time, the U.S. is closer to figuring out how to have Russia agree to peace that does not include maximalist demands that they demanded from the very start?
However, I mean, we still don't know what is those 20 points. If you remember, there was a 28 points. Now it's 20 points. We still don't know exactly what is those points contain. So it's all. Looks like the U.S. and Ukraine agreed on some kind of process, and now its ball is on the Russian side. And from what we are seeing right now, and from the press conference that President Putin had recently, yesterday, that it doesn't look like Russia is ready to accept half of their demands or compromise. And actually, what is important today, there are a couple of days in a row, the Odessa, the Black Sea, Ukrainian Black Sea port is bombarded constantly by Russian drones and rockets. So it doesn't look that if the President Putin wants kind of peace, that doesn't look for, with his action doesn't look like that.
So as we speak, the Miami talks come amid the EU agreeing on the 90 billion euro loan, but not reaching, in fact, the consensus about the mobilization of the frozen Russian assets to finance Ukraine. Is how things played out so far in terms of the loan, in terms of the frozen Russian assets, a show of strength or perhaps a show of failure?
We can say probably both, because from one perspective, this $90 billion euro agreement is a very important step, and show that Europeans realize how important it is to support Ukraine today, and realize that Ukraine today is fighting for Europe, and Ukraine is the last European defense on the continent today. So that the fact that they did not come into these discussions, they did not have plan B, meaning the one was to use the Russian assets, and plan B, there was no plan B. And they put together, they negotiated for many hours to the late night, and negotiated this 90 billion. So it's a win for Ukraine, obviously, because this loan is Ukraine would have to pay this back only if Russia will pay reparation after the war is over. So is anyone hoping that Russia will pay? That's the big question. So if that would not happen, Ukraine doesn't need to repay. And these assets are immobilized right now in Europe, and that was a very important step as well last Friday, that European Union agreed on that issue. But at the same time, it shows a little bit of weakness of European Union, because so many times or so long they were negotiating this possibility of using Russian frozen assets, and it didn't happen. Now the burden of this money will come on the shoulder of taxpayers, European taxpayers, and that can actually create a later problem in division of the society, disinformation, and the issue. So I hope, and a lot of experts hope, that next year European Union would actually find a solution to use this frozen assets.
Mm-hmm. And now, as my final question, we hear that 3 of the member state countries opted out from the loan program, the loan that we just spoke about: Czech Republic, Hungary, and Slovakia. What does this say about the unity of the bloc in face of increasing danger on behalf of Russia?
That says that actually European Union is a little bit divided in handling crisis situation, crisis issues, and the fact that those countries opted out, they present this as a win for their societies, because they are not signing in to give this money. That's why I'm saying that it's very, very important that Russia pay, not European taxpayers, but Russia pay for this war.
Thank you so much. Miroslava Gongadze, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, was my guest. Thank you very much for joining me on the program.
Thank you.
And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you back here for more news and features. Good night.